Today our topic is ectopic pregnancy. Let's see what is ectopic pregnancy. First of all, before starting ectopic pregnancy, I want to discuss this chart. This is bleeding per vaginal in pregnancy approach. We see if the bleeding is in less than 24-week period, if it is in greater than 24-week period, or after childbirth. If it is less than 24-week period, means it is early pregnancy bleeding or it is first trimester bleed. So what are the DDs? We see if there is acute abdomen and less than 24-week bleeding per vaginal bleeding, then we should suspect ectopic pregnancy in a female who is in her reproductive age group. If we see passage of fetal parts and the bleeding per vaginal less than 24 week, then it can be miscarriage. If we see bleeding less than 24 week and there are passage of vesicles, then it can be gestational trophoblastic disease. If we see that the patient is in her more than 24 weeks of gestation, then the third trimester bleed DDs means greater than 24 week to term 37 week. If she bleeds in the time between this group 24 to 37 means before childbirth, we see if the bleeding is painless or painful. If it is painless, then it is most likely placenta previa. If it is painful, it is most likely abruptio placenta or placental abruption. If it is after childbirth, so it is postpartum hemorrhage, and postpartum hemorrhage, if it is less than 24 hours, there is massive bleeding and bleeding that is not normal, abnormally high bleeding we see, and less than 24 hours, it is most likely primary PPH, and if it is greater than 24 hours up to 42 days, then it is called as secondary PPH. So let's see. In normal pregnancy, we see the fertilization occurs in the tube, here in the ampulla, and after that the embryo, it should move to endometrium. So in the endometrium, the embryo is implanted normally here in the uterus or endometrium. This is the normal site. But sometimes what happens after fertilization here in the tube, if there is problem with the ciliary movement of the fallopian tube, or if there are problems within this embryo, or there are any other problems which inhibit the movement of the fertilized embryo or fertilized egg to the uterus or endometrium, so this pregnancy is called as ectopic pregnancy, means the embryo is implanted anywhere outside the uterus, that is its normal site of implantation. If it is implanted here out in the tube or anywhere in the cervix, interstitial site, or if we see it is in ovaries, in the peritoneum, in the cervical area, or in the abdomen. So we see the most common site of implantation in the ectopic pregnancy is ampulla of the tube, in which there is 70% chance, and in the isthmus 12%, in the femoral 11%, ovarian 3%, interstitial here 2% chance, and in the abdomen there is 1% chance. So the most common site is ampulla of the tube. Here it is 70% chance if it's ectopic pregnancy, so it will be implanted here. So we see what's the definition of ectopic pregnancy. It is implantation of fertilized ovum outside the uterine cavity. So sites in the fallopian tube, 97% of the chance is in the fallopian tubes. So in the ampulla it is 70%, isthmus 12%, in the femori 11%, and in peritoneum it is 1% to 0.05. Round and broad ligament of the uterus, Here it can also be implanted in cervix, in vagina, in the ovaries. We see what is heterotopic pregnancy. In the heterotopic pregnancy, we see when ectopic pregnancy coexists with intrauterine pregnancy. Means if there is normal pregnancy and also there is ectopic, so this type of pregnancy is heterotopic. What is the epidemiology of ectopic? It occurs in 1 to 100 pregnancies. It is the fourth leading cause of maternal mortality, leading cause of maternal death in the first trimester. What is the etiology? We see sometimes 50% there is chance to do damage of fallopian tube cilia following pelvic inflammatory disease. So normally due to ciliary movement in the fallopian tube, the fertilized ovum moves to the endometrium or uterus after being fertilized. But if there is any damage to the cilia due to any cause, the most common is pelvic inflammatory disease. So it cannot move to the normal site, endometrium, so it can cause ectopic pregnancy. So the implantation of the embryo is in the fallopian tube. If there is intrinsic abnormality of the fertilized ovum, that it cannot move to the uterine cavity, or there is conception that is late in the cycle, or transmigration of the fertilized ovum to the contralateral tube. So what are the risk factors? If there is previous ectopic pregnancy, there is very high chance that another pregnancy will be also ectopic. IUD use is increased risk if pregnancy occurs, means if the patient is using contraception with intrauterine device and if the pregnancy occurs at that time, so there is increased risk of the ectopic pregnancy. History of pelvic inflammatory disease, especially in the infection with chlamydia trachomatis. So if there is infection of due to this organism, so there is likely more chance. Infertility treatment, for example IVF for pregnancy, previous procedures, any surgery on fallopian tube for previous ectopic or tubal ligation, abnormal surgery for ruptured appendix, or so smoking is not the risk factor for the ectopic pregnancy. So here should be non-smokers. What are the structural risk factors? Uterine leiomyomas, adhesions, abnormal uterine anatomy. So if there are fibroids already, adhesions, or any abnormal uterine anatomy, for example T-shaped uterus, it can also lead to ectopic pregnancy. What is the pathogenesis? The pathogenesis, trophoblast. What happens if the trophoblast invades the mucosa of the fallopian tubes? For example, in the fallopian tube, the implantation occurs and the fertilized ovum doesn't move to uterus, so it invades the mucosa of the fallopian tube. Then there is mild intraperitoneal bleed and sometimes rupture of the fallopian tubes. Then it causes massive intraperitoneal hemorrhage. Then the patient can go into shock. What are the clinical features? The patient will be in her reproductive years. 15 to 45 years is the average age. With risk factors, time is less than 24 weeks of gestation. Presentation can be acute if ectopic pregnancy occurs in the fallopian tube, which is 97 to 98% of the chance, or the presentation will be subacute if the ectopic pregnancy is other than the fallopian tube. If its site is other than the fallopian tube. So we see what is the acute presentation in ectopic pregnancy. What is the triad? There is gestational amenorrhea for 6 to 8 weeks. There is right iliac fossa or left iliac fossa pain that is colicky in nature. There will be mild pervaginal bleeding. There will be old dark brown blood because of shedding of the decidua that was prepared endometrium for the pregnancy. And on examination, if we see in the general physical exam, there will be shock like features can be absent or present at the time of presentation. The pulse can be high, BP will be low, there will be cold clammy skin, dry mucous membrane, sunken eyes, decreased urine output. These features will be when there will be massive intraperitoneal hemorrhage, but we see no pervaginal bleeding, but there will be spotting. Mostly there will be spotting because the bleeding will be inside intraperitoneal, and there will be massive peritoneal hemorrhage, but there will be no massive PV bleeding. There will be mild pervaginal bleeding or just spotting. When we see the abdomen, there will be tenderness and the right iliac fossa pain, left iliac fossa pain, and there will be gardening in the abdomen. When we do pervaginal exam, we see there is a Chandelier sign positive. What is the Chandelier sign? This is on moving the cervix, there will be increase in the pain intensity. On moving cervix, there will be increase in the pain intensity. This is positive Chandelier sign. And what is the subacute presentation triad when the ectopic pregnancy is other than the fallopian tube? So we see amenorrhea of 10 to 12 weeks, because the most acute presentation in the is there when there is ectopic pregnancy in the fallopian tube, because there will be obstruction of the lumen of the tube. So if there is ectopic pregnancy at other side, for example ovary, abdomen or cervix, so there will be no luminal obstruction, so the presentation will be like in 10 to 12 weeks. There will be mild dull abdominal pain, and in right iliac fossa and left iliac fossa pain, mild PV bleeding or spotting. So this will be subacute ectopic pregnancy triad. And pain in the right shoulder as RBCs irritate the undersurface of the diaphragm, and there is phrenic nerve, so there will be irritation and pain in the right shoulder. What will be the investigations and management of the patient? If we suspect ectopic pregnancy, there will be positive urine beta HCG, there will be abdominal pain and vaginal bleeding. So we see if the patient comes and she is hemodynamically stable. So first of all, we will see beta HCG, and if beta HCG is 1000 to 6000 international units per liter, so we will do transvaginal ultrasound, because this is, in that case it will be not possible, or it will be difficult that we can see something in the transabdominal ultrasound. So we will do transvaginal ultrasound. So no gestational sac in the uterine cavity will confirm that the conceptus is not inside the uterus. So most probably it is ectopic pregnancy. And if it is greater than 6000 beta HCG, so we will do transabdominal ultrasound, and empty uterus will confirm the conceptus outside the uterus. So what we will do urgent laparotomy, and we see if the other tube is normal or the ectopic is ipsilateral recurrence, so we will do salpingectomy. But there will be 15% risk of persistent trophoblast, so we will monitor beta HCG weekly. And if we see on laparotomy that the other tube is diseased, or the tube is salvageable, or the tube that is affected is salvageable, or the other tube is diseased, so we will do salpingostomy, and we will do weekly beta HCG for follow-up. If the patient is hemodynamically unstable with suspicion of impending or ongoing ruptured ectopic, then we will do resuscitation, and then the procedure of the choice will be urgent laparotomy. And if we see that the patient is symptomatic but stable without shock, then the procedure is laparoscopy. And the intervention in this situation depends upon, if we see that beta HCG is less than 5000 and the sac size is less than 3.5 centimeter, and also the ectopic pregnancy is unruptured, and there is no contraindication to medical treatment for methotrexate, and there is good compliance, and the patient is willing to do follow-up, then we will give injection methotrexate into 5 milligram intrafallopian. And we see if beta HCG is greater than 5000, sac size is more than 3.5 centimeter, or there is contraindication to methotrexate, then we will go for surgery. And in surgery we will see if fallopian tube is normal, other fallopian tube is normal, then we will do salpingectomy of the diseased tube, and if other tube is also diseased, then we will do salpingostomy. So in the medical treatment, methotrexate use 50 mg per meter square body surface area given in a single intramuscular dose, 82 to 92% success rate, but up to 25% of the patient requires a second dose. So 25% patient requires a second dose, and we will also give Rohogam if Rh negative. If patient is Rh negative in all these situations, we will give Rohogam. If the patient is asymptomatic, so we see if the patient is asymptomatic and the beta HCG is less than 100 international units and beta HCG is declining and the patient is stable clinically, no fetal heartbeat or extrauterine sac suspicion. If there is no fetal heartbeat is there, or there is the suspicion for extrauterine sac, but the patient is liable to follow up, so expectant management will be given when the beta HCG is less than 100 and patient and beta HCG is declining also. So what is the expectant management? Monitor beta HCG 2 times per week. So we will monitor 2 times beta HCG per week and continue until beta HCG is less than 20 international units. Or if there is plateaued or rising levels of beta HCG, it suggests persistent trophoblastic tissue that requires further treatment. What are the some important points? That rise of less than 20% of beta HCG is 100% predictive of a non-viable pregnancy. So if there is less than 20% rise of beta HCG, so it means it can be ectopic, it can be a miscarriage later on or a failing pregnancy. So in 85% of ectopic pregnancy, there will be abnormal beta HCG doubling. There can be doubling also. Ultrasound is only definitive of fetal cardiac activity detected in the tube or in the uterus, but the definitive diagnosis is laparoscopy. We see any woman that presents with abdominal pain, vaginal bleeding, and amenorrhea is an ectopic pregnancy until proven otherwise. What are the features of ruptured ectopic pregnancy? Acute abdomen with increasing pain, abdominal distension, and the shock. What are the diagnoses of lower abdominal pain? There can be UTI, urinary tract infection, kidney stones. In gastrointestinal system, there can be diverticulitis, appendicitis. In gynae, endometriosis, pelvic inflammatory disease, fibroids, ovarian torsion, ovarian neoplasm, ovarian cyst, and pregnancy related complications. Management of abortions, we see first of all we should always rule out an ectopic pregnancy. Always check Rh. If it is negative, then give Rohogam. Always ensure patient is hemodynamically stable. What are the contraindications to methotrexate therapy? Abnormalities in the hematological system, hepatic system, or renal system. We should not use methotrexate. Immunodeficiency, active pulmonary disease, peptic ulcer disease, or hypersensitivity to methotrexate, heterotropic pregnancy with coexisting viable intrauterine pregnancy, or breastfeeding, or the patient is unwilling or unable to adhere to methotrexate protocol. What is the prognosis? 9% of maternal death during pregnancy is attributed to ectopic pregnancy. 40 to 60% patient will become pregnant again after surgery. 10 to 12% will have subsequent ectopic pregnancy. Now let's move to multiple choice questions for ectopic pregnancy. We see a 24-year-old woman with 6 weeks amenorrhea. Now it is 6 weeks amenorrhea. Patient is coming with less than 24 weeks, develops continuous lower abdominal pain and minimal vaginal bleeding. Uterus is slightly enlarged and cervix is soft and tender on motion. There is adnexal tenderness. The history and clinical findings are more suggestive of, so we know that it is ectopic pregnancy. Case number 2, a 26-year-old female presents with lower abdominal pain and vaginal bleeding. Her last menstrual period was 7 weeks ago. A urine pregnancy test is positive and a quantitative beta HCG level is 2500 international unit per ml. Intravaginal ultrasound show no evidence of an intrauterine gestational sac. So when we see intravaginal ultrasound, there is no intrauterine gestational sac. Baseline laboratory tests including CBC, LFTs and renal functions are normal. She is treated with a single dose of intramuscular methotrexate at 50 mg per meter square of body surface. Day 4 lab results show quantitative beta HCG level of 2800 on day 4. 7 days later, the patient came for re-evaluation and her quantitative beta HCG is 2640 international units, means that she has received methotrexate but there is no improvement. So what is the next step? So we have already discussed that 25% patients will require a repeat dose of methotrexate. So 85 to 90% patient recover, but 20 to 25% patient requires a second dose. Now case number 3, a 24-year-old female presents to your department with complaints of light lower quadrant abdominal pain. The pain started 6 hours ago and she feels it is getting progressively worse. The pain does not radiate anywhere else and on a scale of 1 to 10 she rates it 8. Nothing makes the pain worse, though she feels better when she lies down. Her past medical history is unremarkable for a history of chlamydia infection 2 years ago, from which had some complications because of the delayed treatment. Her father is 50 years old and had a history of peptic ulcer disease for many years, and her mother is 49 years old and she is healthy. The patient's last menstrual period was 5 weeks ago, though she noticed vaginal spotting. The last 2 days, it was not the normal flow she usually has during menses. She reports that her menarche was at the age of 13 and for last 10 years she had regular menstrual periods every 26 days. She is sexually active with her boyfriend and uses condoms inconsistently. She denies smoking or drinking alcohol. She works at a hotel receptionist. On physical examination, the Rovsing sign and obturator signs are negative. There's a unilateral right-sided adnexal tenderness on palpation. Which of the following would most likely alert you patient's diagnosis? So we see all the features are going towards ectopic, and if beta HCG titers are more than 1500 without intrauterine gestational sac, if we do ultrasound of this patient and there is beta HCG on lab test that is more than the value of a non-pregnant woman, and we see on ultrasound that there is no intrauterine gestational sac, so it confirms our diagnosis of ectopic. Now, which factors bring the most increased risk for ectopic pregnancy? What are the factors that brings the most increased risk for ectopic pregnancy? History of tubal surgery and conception after tubal ligation, intrauterine device in place, use of fertility drugs, 3 successive episodes of PID or history of prior normal pregnancy, and OCP use. So mostly all of the options are going towards the risk factors for ectopic, but they are asking for most increased risk. So it says 3 successive episodes of PID. So we see risk factors for ectopic pregnancy include previous ectopic pregnancy, history of a sexually transmitted disease or pelvic inflammatory disease, current use of an intrauterine device, prior pelvic surgery, and smoking. So some organisms causing PID such as Neisseria gonorrhoeae increase the risk of ectopic pregnancy. A history of salpingitis increase the risk of ectopic pregnancy fourfold. So the incidence of tubal damage increases after successive episodes of PID. So that is 13% after first episode. So after first episode of PID, 13% in risk of ectopic, 35 after second episode, and 75% after third episode. After one ectopic pregnancy, a patient incurs a 7 to 13 fold increase in the likelihood of another ectopic pregnancy. So overall, a patient with prior ectopic pregnancy have a 50 to 80% chance of having a subsequent intrauterine gestation and a 10 to 25% chance of a tubal pregnancy. So here the most increased percentage is, the studies have shown that if we see the third episode will have 75% chance of having ectopic. So if there are 3 successive episodes of PID, so it is having higher chance for ectopic pregnancy. Then a 23-year-old sexually active female woman with a prior history of pelvic inflammatory disease presents with sudden onset of pelvic pain. On initial workup exam, you note the following: beta HCG titer 5400 international units, WBC is 4.5 into 10 raised to power 9, differentials 63 polymorphonuclear cells and 0 band 37 lymphocytes. Temperature is 37.3, 99.1 Fahrenheit, and endovaginal ultrasound shows nothing in the uterus. A 2 centimeter simple left ovarian cyst and moderate free fluid in the cul sac. The most likely diagnosis is, it is also ectopic pregnancy. So we see with her prior history of PID, her chances of tubal damage are significantly elevated since she is pregnant with an HCG titer over 2000 international units, and intrauterine gestational sac should have been seen on the endovaginal ultrasound. But an endovaginal ultrasound show nothing in the uterus. With the moderate amount of free fluid in the cul-de-sac along with the pelvic pain and normal white count and temperature, the index of suspicion for an ectopic pregnancy must be high. So, a 21-year-old married Hispanic female who is using no method of contraception presents to your office for evaluation of vaginal spotting 6 weeks after her last menstrual period. Her periods have previously been regular. She has had one previous episode of pelvic inflammatory disease. A home pregnancy test is positive. So what would be your answer? So the options: painless bleeding excludes the diagnosis of ectopic pregnancy. It is not correct. Laparoscopy should be performed to exclude ectopic, but her vitals are normal. She is normally came here for checkup. And serum progesterone level greater than 25 mg per ml indicates that ectopic pregnancy is likely. So the best option is serum HCG level should double every 2 to 3 days if pregnancy is viable. So early diagnosis of ectopic pregnancy requires a high index of suspicion. Risk factors include previous ectopic tubal sterilization, PID, IUD use, and in utero exposure to diethylstilbestrol. So the classic triad of missed menses, pain, and the bleeding may not also be present. In early pregnancies of less than 5-week gestation, serial HCG levels are helpful. So serum HCG levels doubles every 1.4 to 2 days. In a healthy pregnancy, the level is expected to increase at least 66% in 48 hours. So combining serial HCG level with transvaginal ultrasound is the best combination for evaluation for first trimester problems. So at 5 weeks gestation in a normal pregnancy, serum HCG is greater than 1000 international unit and a gestational sac can be visualized in the uterus. So serum HCG level should double every 2 to 3 days if pregnancy is viable. Now, in the treatment of an ectopic pregnancy with methotrexate, all of the following are true except. So the option that is not correct is it must be at least 5 centimeter in size. We have discussed in the flow chart that if it is greater than 3.5 centimeter in, if it is less than 3.5 centimeter in size, then and it is unruptured, so we will use methotrexate. And if it is more than 3.5 centimeter in size and if the patient have contraindication of methotrexate, or if it is ruptured or beta HCG is more than 5000, so we will go for surgery. So the criteria for methotrexate include hemodynamic stability, confirmation of ectopic pregnancy by ultrasound examination, significant risk associated with general anesthesia, patient compliance, lack of contraindication to methotrexate, and small size of ectopic mass, and ectopic mass is less than 3.5 centimeter in greatest dimension, and lack of fetal cardiac activity. So the option here that it should be at least 5 centimeter is not correct. So hope you have understood the topic pregnancy well. Thank you.